Welcome to Timeball Games. I'm ELD, here to ask you for help in growing the channel. When we reach 2,500 subscribers, I'm going to be giving away a custom leather playmat to one lucky subscriber, so be sure to like and subscribe. Welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering from ELD's Timeball Games in Bellingham, Mass. We have Connor playing Show and Tell, Sneak and Show, versus Nathan on Death Shadow. At one point, the best of the Delver variants, fallen out of favor with the printing of Renin 6, and probably worth revisiting when we get back to the table here to play some Paper Legacy. The Invocation, I believe, Force of Will taken off of Thoughtseize. And really, discard is an incredibly effective way to fight against the Show and Tell variants. They need to get all of their combo assembled in hand, which makes it particularly vulnerable to cards like Thoughtseize and Hymn to Torok, especially if they don't have Veil of Summer to protect themselves from those black discard spells. Ponder for Connor continues to dig, looking to sculpt that hand after losing the protection of Force of Will. Nathan at 15 life, but he does have a fetch land on board, so he could land a Death Shadow as a 1/1. One of the really unfortunate things for Show and Tell is they have no way of interacting with these efficient threats. No spot removal. It's not like a traditional control deck at all. It is very much a combo deck despite running Force of Will and so many counters. And here we see a Death Shadow landing as a 3/3 thanks to Watery Grave, Street Wraith, and fetching, going from 15 down to just 10. And one thing you'll learn about Death Shadow playing against it in Legacy is just how quick those life totals can drop. Usually at least 3 life a turn. Then you have things like Street Wraith and Thoughtseize. Oh, and Reanimate. That's probably the biggest chunk right there. 5 life off to get another threat on board. And he can go all the way down to 2 with this Bloodstain Mire. And talk about growing the threat. This Death Shadow in 11/11. At this point, Gristlebrand's just a chump blocker. Unreal. Just how large these 1-mana threats can get. This is probably the best sales pitch for Death Shadow right here. Attacking this early in the game with an 11/11 for only 1 mana. Emrakul would dwarf him, but then the Street Wraith would actually get in to do lethal. Force of Will stops this Show and Tell, and that is it. Nathan with only 1 point of life left, but that is where you want to be with Death Shadow. You really only want those last few life points to enable your Force of Wills. Oh, and he flashes a Surgical Extraction, a card that he may bring in, despite Show and Tell not being a graveyard-based strategy at all. When you've got as much discard as Death Shadow can potentially run, it's actually not that bad to have a singleton copy of Surgical Extraction. Also can be very important in the middle of defending the stack. So if they're trying to resolve a card like Show and Tell, if they do fire off, say, a Force of Will, you can actually Surgical their Force and push through your other counters. Same goes for really any of the counters. Show and Tell has been built a little bit better in recent years. Right now, I believe they're trying out Daze in the main deck as well for additional support. Kind of speeds the deck up a little bit. And, of course, they have Spell Pierce, Flusterstorm. No shortage of counters in Legacy. It's really just picking the ones that you feel are the best. Death Shadow, on the other hand, gets to play an unusual one. Many Legacy players have not actually gone up against Stubborn Denial, but that 1-mana spell ends up being a hard counter once you have a creature with 4 or greater power on board, which is not very difficult to do when you're running Death Shadow and Gurmag Angler. Lotus Petal from Connor off of this volcanic island. looking pretty solid here on turn number 1. He's able to ponder and get some acceleration. Street Wraith being cycled for Nathan, and a turn 1 Street Wraith. And talk about Death Shadow being one of the better Delver variants. Part of the reason is because it has so many Delvers. Of course, Delver of Secrets is the blue creature everybody's always concerned about on turn 1, but a turn 1 Street Wraith actually has a bigger backside and helps further the game plan with Death Shadow. And of course, at this point, at 8 life, there you go, he's got a Death Shadow down, a 1-mana 5/5, and then Gurmag Angler later on in the game can also be a 1-mana threat. So Death Shadow really has a ton of very inexpensive threats that it can deploy, able to leave up counter magic, and really just has so many angles of attack. They're able to attack your life total rapidly, attack the stack with counter spells, your hand with discard, and potentially wastelands as well to go after your mana base. Brainstorm for Connor, facing down a very fast clock. He could actually be dead next turn depending on what he does with his life. And no, we've got a Show and Tell, Spell Pierce the Stubborn Denial, and let's see what these players put in. Omniscience. Connor doesn't have it. He's got to dig. Nathan only putting in a Bloodstain Mire, but that's not inconsequential. That could actually get his life total way lower. Oh, and there's the Emrakul, and that is a play of great consequence. That ends the game on the spot. Extra turn, Annihilator 6, 15 damage in the air, and that is a wrap. So let's see here. We've got Nathan with 1 win and Connor with 1 win. Going into game number 3, Nathan going to be on the play. We see that unmistakable splash of red with Force of Will. I love how they paid tribute to that on Force of Negation. It's really a good understanding of Magic cards as art in and of themselves. It's one thing to have beautiful art on a Magic card. It's another to understand how a Magic card will be perceived from across the room, from across the table, and to see that strong contrast in between the reds and oranges and yellows of Force of Will on that blue background just makes it unmistakable. We've got a turn 1 cycle Street Wraith, probably light on mana given that he didn't crack the fetch land first. The typical thought process there would be you would crack the fetch land to make sure that you don't draw extra lands. This Thoughtseize gets Force of Willed. However, Connor only has basic island go. Will we see a soul land into a turn 2 win? Gotta wonder what he is protecting to be willing to lose 2 Force of Wills over this Thoughtseize. And if Nathan can follow this up with some more discard, it's going to feel particularly bad. Is he going to pass the turn? He does. So still no clock, no additional discard. A Ponder now for Connor. He may have everything he needs, but will he be able to force it through being down those 2 potential counters? Another Ponder for Nathan, and we're coming up now on turn 3. Still no threat. Not ideal. Death Shadow really wants to, like every Delver deck, get down a clock and start applying some pressure. Fetching now. And getting a Gurmag Angler into play. That is definitely a clock. It also turns on Stubborn Denial. And we may see very soon exactly what type of counter backup Nathan's going to have. A brainstorm from Connor. And he is trying to build some defense around whatever show and tell he ends up casting. It's got to resolve. Really do not have time to be throwing out 3-mana sorceries as bait. And oof, him to Torok. A very dangerous card. Does he have a Spell Pierce to stop this? He's got a Brainstorm. He continues to dig. However, any further reply may be vulnerable to Daze. Him such a potent card. At the end of Death Shadow's prevalence in the metagame, it was actually a main deck card. Bitter Blossom was also a card that started making its way into the main deck. Just having some more 2-mana spells of relevance, and this is feeling very bad for Connor, having Force of Willed earlier to protect his hand, and now Nathan rolling nothing but 6s. Random cards. We've got a no, that's a Flooded Strand, I believe, and perhaps a Sneak Attack. City of Traders, and now it feels like he has just a ton of lands in play. Ponder, he continues to dig. He's got at most 3 turns left. This Gurmag Angler will close this out in 3 turns left unchecked. There's a fetch land on board. Force of Will would make this a 2-turn clock if Connor does need to fire it off. So there is value in getting your opponent down to 1 life when they are playing a combo deck and may be able to just kill you if their Force of Will resolves. That's no small thing. But Nathan likely wants to add a little bit more pressure. Not going to give up on counter spells for pressure at this stage. Better off having multiple Stubborn Denials or potentially Dazes. Though with all of this mana, Connor may be able to pay for Daze. Nathan really has to be careful with this Brainstorm to play this optimally. A Death Shadow. Just a 1-1 for now, but this really does put Connor in a must-go-all-in situation. He cannot afford to pass the turn and potentially just lose to literally any life loss that Nathan might have. So here it is, Show and Tell. Counter number 1, Stubborn Denial, Spell Pierce, Force of Negation, pitching Daze. Just surprising. He actually could have dazed there. It looks like he actually would have been fine. But that is it. Nathan winning that counter battle and Connor showing his defenses, a couple of defense grids and a Flusterstorm not arriving. And Death Shadow proving exactly why it's such a difficult matchup for Sneak and Show. That is all for this one, but don't worry, there is a lot more. You can check out our older videos, and we're always putting out new videos from ELD's Time Vault Games in Bellingham, Massachusetts. If you want to help the channel, of course, you can like, subscribe, share, tap that notification bell so you can know the next time our new videos come out. Thanks for watching.